Hey, everybody, it's Jeremy Osterberger with Big Magazine. I've got Chris Jahn, President and CEO of the American Chemistry Council, hanging out with us today. For folks that don't know the ACC, they represent about $550 billion in the U.S. chemicals industry, as well as plastics and chlorine production companies across the U.S. Chris, thanks so much for hanging out.
Thanks, Jeremy. Always good to be with you.
Yeah, Chris. No, man, I love hanging out with you a few times a year. We always get caught up on what's going on in the chemical market. And Chris, it's Christmas time when the kids are clamoring for the elf. He's made it into the house, and now me and my wife have to be creative every night, or else they lambast us when he doesn't move the next morning.
I feel your pain. My kids are a little bit past that point, but I've been there.
Well, Chris, I can't wait to get there. Well, Well, look, man. It's certainly we've had a wonderful year, many, many blessings, and that's the reason for the season. Thanks, Chris, for joining us today, and again, always appreciate our time. Well, Chris, let's talk rail strike and chemicals. So today the president signed a bill that was passed by the House and the Senate to avert a freight rail strike, and some say could have plunged us into a recession. With that strike averted, how would that have affected the chemical industry and really the nation in a broader sense?
So, Jeremy, it would have been catastrophic. And I know I work in Washington, D.C., and we're accused of hyperbole there. But in this case, it's actually true. So, the chemical industry is one of the biggest shippers in the country. Our industry moves about 33,000 carloads per week, about a value of about $3 billion. And that's everything that goes into the manufacturing sector. As you know, the business of chemistry, kind of the beginning of that manufacturing supply chain. So it goes into auto sector, pharmaceuticals, refining, semiconductors, anything you can think of that's manufactured, our members support. And you mentioned chlorine at the outset in that intro there. That was one of the big things that we were worried about, water treatment at drinking water facilities and shipments of chlorine. So, and the reason for that is the impact a strike would have had, the deadline was December 9th, which is next week, but they would have stopped accepting shipments from our industry in about 20 different chemistries, including chlorine, a week in advance. And a lot of these facilities only keep about a week to 10 days worth of supply on hand. So by the time we reach the deadline, we in our industry would have already seen significant impacts and backups in the supply chain, which, as we know, for the past 2.5 years has been incredibly challenged. So the impacts would have been huge.
We were at the cliff today, is basically what you were saying.
We are right at it. Yes, exactly. Starting tomorrow on Saturday, December 3rd, that's when our members would have had to stop shipping some of these products.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of communication with hazardous materials. Trey, that was a big thing in the news the last couple of days of what you're saying. They really were starting to shut a lot of that down, this week.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, so Chris, tell us about the American Chemistry Council's role in working with stakeholders to get this resolved.
Yeah, so we really put out a kind of all-out approach to this from kind of the typical shoe leather lobbying that we always do. So we met with folks in the White House. We met with a number of members of Congress and their staff, met with leaders in Congress about this issue. So to give you a kind of the more detail on that, we met with White House staff the day before Thanksgiving, followed up with them the day after Thanksgiving. And then to his credit, and we've been very critical of the Biden administration other times, so I've got to give him his due. On Monday, after Thanksgiving, he came out and said, we got to pass this deal and we got to do it this week. Okay. And so the House followed on Wednesday and the Senate followed on Thursday. And Jeremy, I got to tell you, if you think about it, we got 290 votes in the House. It's about 2/3 of the House. And we got 80 votes in the Senate. When's the last time you can think of anything substantive that 2/3 to 3/4 of Congress actually agreed on? So our members were very much engaged in this. We had a number of CEOs in those meetings with members of Congress, with the White House staff, so they could give them the real world impacts of what a rail service embargo would have created.
That's right. So, Chris, hey, how do we do a better job in the future to resolve this between maybe, union and private enterprise? And look, there's still more work to do. If you really look at it, what Congress said was, hey, we're going to keep this industry rolling, but there are still negotiations that need to be had, right? Which is the proper way to take this. This should be between the unions and the private enterprises, right? As far as their demands and negotiations.
Yes, we reached this point because that process had broken down. So believe it or not, Jeremy, these negotiations have been going on for 3 years.
Hmm.
And we'd already done federal mediation. They'd already had a presidential emergency board make some recommendations. So we'd really reached the end of the process where Congress was the place of last resort to get it resolved. And there's actually a provision in the Railway Labor Act that allows for that to happen. And it's been used 18 times in the past. But you're right, the private sector and unions ought to figure this out in the future. And guess what? I hate to tell you this, but because we're 3 years into this contract, we're going to be dealing with this in 2 years. So the hope is that they can kind of let things cool off a little bit, start negotiations for the next round, address the issues they couldn't resolve this time around, and hopefully in 2 years, you and I aren't having this conversation.
That's right. And frame of reference for our audience, the RLA was passed about 100 years ago, and essentially says that the nation could be so disrupted by rail cars not operating and could wreck the economy. Therefore, Congress has the ability to step in and put in a short summary. So,
Yep.
okay.
Exactly right.
So Chris, tell us about the ACC in this year. Tell us about what you're most proud of. What all do we get done this year in 2022?
Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind in terms of what we got done this year and what we're really proud of. One is preventing a rail strike, so that would certainly go to the top of the list. Another issue was the Inflation Reduction Act and the provisions that passed in that. There are significant incentives for a lot of our members to make big investments in helping decarbonize the economy. And so you're seeing our members, I know you know down there, are investing in things like carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And so a lot of the incentives and credits in the bill will accelerate the development of these technologies, things like hydrogen as well. So a lot of our members are making significant investments there too. And so we're really pleased that the bill that passed has those incentives, because the original version of that bill also had a bunch of tax increases on corporations, for foreign tax credits, on plastics, and none of those things were in the final version of the bill. So net, that was a big win for our members. That's one. And another one is our FOSSI program, and you and I have talked about it in the past, our Future of STEM Scholars Initiative. That's $40,000 scholarships for students who are studying STEM disciplines at historically Black colleges and universities. Oh. So, Jeremy, we have 300 kids in college right now who are getting those scholarships from our industry. We got 40 different majors at 39 HBCUs. We've got commitments for 550 scholarships. So we're well on our way to 1,000 scholars by 2025. That's our goal. Jeremy, in 2 years, we have raised $30 million for that scholarship program. And I just found out a couple of weeks ago, that is the biggest program of its kind in the United States that we created just 2 years ago with our partners at American Institute of Chemical Engineers, HBCU Week, and one of our member companies, Chemours. So I'm tremendously proud of the progress we've made in a short amount of time there.
No, Chris, that's incredible. And hey, those opportunities are going to be valuable to the industry years down the road.
Absolutely. 100%. We need folks with STEM disciplines, STEM degrees. We need to diversify our industry, and we're able to do both of those with this one program.
And congrats to those kids who are smart enough to get a scholarship, not so much me. So congrats. So, well, Chris, let's talk 2023. What are going to be the priorities for the American chemical industry heading into next year?
Yeah, so we've got a new Congress, obviously, and a little different landscape there. So I think some of the top priorities for us will be addressing chemical regulation issues under the Toxic Substances Control Act, or TSCA. We think EPA is on the wrong track on some of the implementation of the reform that passed in 2016. And we'll be trying to work with them and work with new leaders in Congress to get that program on the right track. We opened this interview and talking about how we're at the beginning of the supply chain. So if we want additional energy, we want semiconductors, we want electric vehicle batteries, we have to get the chemical regulation piece of that correct in order for that to happen. So that's one. Two, we still have supply chain issues. So we averted a rail strike, but rail service isn't really what it needs to be. And so we need to, for both Congress and the Surface Transportation Board, to address those issues going forward. At the same time, it's not just rail. It's also, we need more capacity in the trucking system, and we would like to increase the weights of vehicles that travel on the road, and both as well as ocean freight. So there's a bill that we helped get passed this year called the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, and we're looking forward to implementation of that next year, so we get more competition, just like we're looking for in the rail system, more competition in ocean freight, so that our members can continue to be competitive on a global basis. So our plate is full, but we're looking forward to it, and we'll get after it right after the first of the year.
Well, Chris, we'll end there. I just want to say thanks for your time and appreciate you laying out 2023 and ACC's role in making 23 a successful year. I know you and I are going to see each other a few times coming up next year, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Always good to see you.
Chris, I hope Santa's good to you and your family.
You as well.
All right, my friend. And for everyone listening, we appreciate you jumping on. Know that we'll continue to provide you with great industry news and insight with wonderful guests like Mr. Chris. For all of you interested in more videos, podcasts, and information, please visit bicmagazine.com. Remember, everyone, it's what we do together that counts.